You're listening to NFRN The Drive, your place for NFRN, NASCAR, and motorsport news. Well, hello again everybody, Colin Denton here for another edition of NFRN The Drive, and despite the long delay, it was well worth it for the kind of finish we had last week at Riki Raceway, a track that we had been to before, and we saw an exciting finish with just 3 cars going down to the wire, but the finish we had here was probably one of the more exciting ones we've ever seen, and it was honestly surprising based on what we saw happen on the last lap. But let's get into the highlights just to see how crazy this one was. And this race started out with Stuart Gradden, your current points leader, on the pole alongside Cody Hagan. But lap number 3, we're going to have trouble in the middle of the pack. Aiden Shepard and Noah Cars get together. Cars is going to go for a flip, and he's going to rebound off of Hagan and then collect much of the middle of the field. Ryan Maiden with a heavy hit right there. Julio Caesar just scraping by, but Stephen Willie is not going to be as lucky. Neither is John Arndt. Aren't a heavy contender in the playoffs right now. Davidson's going to get caught with a passing penalty on the ensuing restart. And then the second caution comes out as Mundinger tries to cut to the outside of lapped car, the other JR. Mundinger rebounds off the inside wall into Jet Kraus. Both those guys were in the top 10 in standings coming into the race. Both knocked out midway through, and then Jonathan Rains, Noah Kim getting together off of turn number 2, and that sets up a late race caution. But Dale Jr. fan 88-83, as he takes the caution in the lead, changes lanes, hits Stuart Gradden, collects second place Van Arsdale. The 27 spins up the racetrack, heavy driver's side door hit by Julio Caesar. Bruno De Barros also involved and airborne. Somehow all 3 of those drivers are okay, and Van Arsdale will race again today in the Amateur Cup Series race. Green flag comes out, 3 laps to go. William Brock is the leader, and he has to hold off a pack of charging cars. Brock got his first lap led in this race, and he's trying everything he can. Looks like Justin Roback is about to cut to his inside, but suddenly a huge burst of speed by Brock on the outside line in this turn, and that sets him up to get in front of this entire pack as Jake Baskinger makes it 3 wide, cuts to the inside to grab a runner-up spot to William Brock, who is going to get his first career victory in his second season. And as we look at those results, we have to point out a huge performance by the Georgia drivers. First, second, and 8th place, with Brock Baskinger and Caleb Campbell down there in 8th place. All 3 of the Georgia drivers that qualified for this race, all finishing inside the top 10. A huge run for the state of Georgia in this one. And also a good run for part-timers Justin Roback and Harris Alvin Alonso, both coming out with top 5 finishes. Despite the woes that put Gradden back in 22nd place, he will retain the points lead as the Ramco Motorsport drivers push their way up to 2nd and 3rd place. And Rampage currently holding the spot opened up by Kenny Knox to earn a way into the playoffs without a win. And unfortunately, we weren't able to reach William Brock to have him on the show today for an interview, but we did mention this stat during the broadcast. 31 races it took William Brock to lead a lap, and to give you some context and perspective on how crazy that was, 32 drivers in Season 1 led a lap within the first 8 races of the series, and then you see the names of some of those guys that took even longer. Harrison Butt was the last among those drivers to lead within the first season. That took him 25 races, which was at Central Plains, and he led a lot of those laps. Lego Bush was the next lowest driver in terms of laps led, and that was 3 laps in race number 23 at Quarters Slammer. And obviously down at the bottom, it took William Brock 31 races to lead his first lap, but it led to his first victory, and he led the most important lap he needed to lead that night. And now we'll move on to some racing news. It was a pretty light week. Obviously, we had Christmas last Monday, and no episode of NFRN The Daily Drive because there wasn't a lot of news that came about after our last episode of The Drive, but we did have some things take place in this past week, and we'll start off talking about some of the changes that NASCAR is making to its regional series. We'll start with the changes being made to the series marks. This includes the K&N Pro Series, Canada's Pinties Series, the Peak Mexico Series, the Welland Euro Series, and the Welland Modified Tour. They will all have their logos updated so that they reflect the same NASCAR logo that was introduced in 2017 and implemented into the Cup Series logo. Goodyear will also introduce a radial tire for the K&N Pro Series, which is much more like what is used in the top 3 national series, which is the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. And this will hopefully allow drivers and teams that are in the K&N Pro Series get more used to those tires in case they decide to make a step up in the sports ladder. Also in the K&N Pro Series, pitting during in-race breaks will be optional, and that will allow teams to elect to stay out and possibly provide them with some strategy. And now teams that do decide to pit will not lose positions to other teams that do pit, and that is consistent with how it was run this year. But drivers that want to stay out and see if they can get some positions could be a new strategy for teams. In Canada's Pinty Series, they will implement brakes at races that are other than the 2 that take place at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and the series will also implement some updates to car bodies that includes the introduction of the Chevrolet Camaro and the Ford Mustang styles. We'll see a few longer races in the K&N Pro Series that could include an additional 25 laps or more at certain venues. They're also going to eliminate private testing for the series, and they'll add an extra practice day before races. In order to be consistent with the top 3 national levels, the overtime line will also be moved to the start-finish line. That came about mid-season in 2017, and now it will be applied to the regional series that use the overtime line. And one last tidbit that we also reported on earlier in the year, the Welland Euro Series will introduce the Nations Cup, which will reward the best national teams. Those medals will be awarded to each event to the 3 highest scoring nations. The Camaro will also get a new front bumper and smaller rear spoiler, and tire regulations will be restructured to allow race winners to celebrate after the race. MillerCoors will not return as the official beer sponsor of NASCAR. The 2 sides couldn't strike a deal to renew. An expiration date was set for today. Coors Light was the sponsor of every race's full award. Miller Lite is expected to remain with Team Penske, even though it's only an 11-race deal, and multiple other sponsors have come on board with Team Penske to run on Brad Keselowski's car. Consolidation within the company has affected their ability to spend on sponsorship. Some news from over the weekend. Tommy Joe Martins announced on Saturday that his truck team, Martins Motorsports, would close down effective immediately. He tweeted that it was a hard decision, a frustrating decision, but the right one for me and my family, end quote. The team was expecting to run a part-time schedule in 2018, but 2 handshake deals for sponsorship fell through. At this point, Martins will focus on running multiple races for BJ McLeod's team in the Xfinity Series, and Martins ran multiple times for this team last year, finishing a career best 11th at Iowa. You'll remember that Martins also had plans to run his own team in the Xfinity Series and attempted to qualify at least 1 race last year, but really didn't pan out anywhere, and he immediately went over to McLeod's team. Minority owner of Chip Ganassi Racing and the Charlotte Hornets, Felix Sabates, is interested in the stake of the Carolina Panthers. The team is up for sale after allegations of workplace misconduct by the current owner, Jerry Richardson, who has given up day-to-day operations of the team by this point. Sabates has a group of business professionals looking to invest in the team and keep it in Charlotte. About 90% of NASCAR teams are based in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Bruden Smith actually had interest in purchasing a stake in the team in early 2016, but with news that Richardson would be selling, a spokesperson with Smith could not comment on his position now. And it looks like Kyle Larson might have some aspirations beyond NASCAR. We all know about his dirt racing background, but he revealed during an episode of the World of Outlaws Open Red podcast that he has aspirations to run the full World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Car Series schedule at some point in his career. And here's a quote from him during that. NASCAR is where I wanted to make it, but I would have been perfectly fine if I had made it, honestly. I'd probably be on the Outlaw Tour right now, racing and loving life. I'd say that racing on the World of Outlaws Tour full-time is my main goal. NASCAR is just a step to get there, end quote. And he also listed some of his idols such as Tony Stewart and Jeff Gordon as reasons why he wanted to get into NASCAR in the first place. After it looked like Irwindale Event Center was going to close down at the end of next month, new operators have signed an agreement to keep the track open beyond then. This comes 4 months after the landowners announced that it would not extend the lease on the property. It was expected to be turned into an outlet mall. 3-time late model track champion Tim Huddleston is involved in this transaction. This is actually the 3rd time that the track has been under pressure of closing. It actually shut down in 2011 due to bankruptcy, but it was able to reopen in 2013. International Speedway Corporation's CMO Darrell Wolfe has been hired by NASCAR to be the Chief Sales and Partnership Officer for both NASCAR and ISC. Wolfe has worked with ISC since 1995 and will report to both NASCAR Executive VP Steve Phelps and ISC President John Saunders. NASCAR said the two organizations will remain independent, so both sides will be represented in Wolfe's sales efforts. Germain Racing unveiled its 2018 scheme for Ty Dillon in the new Chevrolet Camaro body. We'll see Geico on the hood for much of the season, Geico Military sponsoring several select races as well. And finally, we'd like to give our congratulations to the Harvick family, who welcomed their 2nd child on Thursday night. Kevin Harvick posting this picture on Twitter of their new baby girl, Piper Grace, who joins her older brother, Keelan Harvick. And that'll just about do it. We are ready to get into some NFRN Amateur Cup Series racing. Today we'll be at Grand Detour, and we are excited to see how the Amateur Cup Series drivers will handle the first short track of the season. We previously saw the Elite Cup Series head to the first short track of the season, and we had Kenny Knox, an Amateur Series driver, take home the victory. Can he do the same here today? We are about to find it out. Obviously, we do want to promote that we do have a Discord server available for all drivers and viewers if they want to come and join us for NFRN or general racing talk. We have it down in the description. You can go join it now on instant invite. But we are ready to get into racing action, so we will see you in the broadcast in just a few moments. For now, my name is Colin Denton. Good night and good riddance.
Louder!